people like me will come and tell you all about the scientific projects that we're working on. And I'll do a little bit about that, and I'm happy to do more of that in the chat. But I thought today we could talk more about what being a scientist actually is. So I work for one of the London universities called King's College London, which is the logo in the top left-hand corner. And my lab is not based at King's College London. I've been lucky enough to be selected to have my lab moved to this brand new research institute called the Crick Institute. Some of you may have seen it or be able to see it when lockdown is no longer present. But this is a brand new purpose-built scientific research institute next to the British Library in St Pancras Station in central London. And we have about 100 people like me in the building. And we are people that run scientific research groups. And there are about 1,000 scientists in the building. So these are people that work for us and perform experiments and do fun things like that. And we have about 1,000 support staff as well. So these are people in technical roles helping the scientific operations of the building run, helping maintain the equipment, helping take care of any HR and legal aspects of the science. So it's a big operation. The building is absolutely gigantic, as you can see. It goes 5 floors up and it goes 6 floors down, would you believe? Almost engaging with the underground lines that run under King's Cross. And that's because we have a lot of very large, very expensive equipment that we keep hidden in the basement. Okay, so next, how do I do next slide? There we go. I thought I'd speak to you a little bit about why I became a scientist and what I really want from a job or a career. What do I want to do with, what did I want to do with my life, and why am I being a scientist? So I really, I want a job that gives me some independence. The thing I really like about being a scientist is that I get to set my agenda. I get to set what I do each day. And I don't really have to answer to anyone. So I don't have a line manager above me that tells me what to do. I run a team and I can decide what questions we will investigate and what area of research we will find. So I'm very lucky that it's a very self-driven, autonomous team that I run. I'm really interested I want to do things that are creative. So people often think of scientists as solving problems, and we do solve problems. But to solve problems, you have to be a creative thinker. So you have to be constantly wondering how things happen, why things happen, and how can we design experiments to show how and why things happen. In many cases, when I speak to my parents-in-law about what scientists do, they always ask me, oh, are you solving problems? Are you curing cancer? Are you making this disease better? And it's not really what I'm doing. I'm trying to find out why things happen, not trying to make things better at the moment. I also want to work with a team of fun and engaged people who are also interested in questioning why things happen. And one of the great things about the scientific career is that it attracts people with an open mindset, with a willingness to engage and be excited about knowledge. I want to do something that's fun. And what you will find in your school experiments, I should think, is that if you have an inclination that you quite like science, you'll find the experiments a bit fun. I certainly did. When I got to university, I found science experiments even more fun. So you should really try and do, I always think you should try and do something that you enjoy, and it makes going to work not like a chore at all. So I absolutely love coming to work because I get to play in the lab and do experiments. I want what I do to have some sort of meaning. In a grander form of thinking about this, I didn't really just want to be pushing papers around in an office. I want to think that at some point, the contributions that I and my lab make to knowledge or to society might have some payoff to make things better for some people, not on an immediate time scale or in a short time horizon, but many years into the future. Maybe some of the things that we discover have a positive impact on people's lives. And I also want it to be challenging. I think it's great to go to work every day and be challenged and confused and befuddled and unsure of what you're trying to find out. And science gives you a wonderful way of exploring how life works. I should say that I'm a bioscientist, which is why I'm talking about life quite so much. So it's a job that combines a lot of things that tick boxes for me, lots of independence, creativity, challenge, and fun. And as school students, I remember as an 18-year-old at sixth form, thinking I'd quite like to be a scientist, but not really understanding what the career structure for sciences are within a university environment. So I found this on the internet and I adapted it slightly. I remember being at stage 5, there are lots and lots of science students in schools around the country, around the world really, all hopefully enjoying and loving the process of science. If you like science, many of you go on to do an undergraduate degree at university. So you study physiology or biology or some ology to do with science. And for many people, that's as far as they want to go. They get a good education, they get a good grounding in university science and problem solving, find out what they like. If you really like science, and like I did, I thought, I really love the experiments, I really love finding out, you can do a postgraduate degree. And this is often called a PhD or a Doctor of Philosophy. And here you are, you work in a research lab trying to find out about a scientific problem that nobody's ever addressed before. And that's what's really exciting about being a scientist, is that you work at the edge of knowledge. Once you've done your PhD, if you stay being a scientist, you work as what's called a postdoctoral researcher. So postdoctoral researchers have got their doctoral degree and they work in laboratories in universities and research institutes up and down the land. And a few postdoctoral researchers manage to get lectureships in universities, and they gain the ability to run their own laboratories and then employ all of the people below them to address the scientific questions that they set. So that's how the hierarchy of scientific structure in a university environment looks like. I should say there are also opportunities to perform science in industrial settings, in commercial companies, major pharmaceuticals and major biosciences companies. But they all have a relatively similar structure in which there are a lot of students, fewer postgraduate students, and 1 or 2 group leaders setting the direction of research. So when I was in school, when I was doing my A-levels, science to me looked a lot like this. It looked a lot like sitting in big laboratories, doing experiments that were written in textbooks to let you find out things that were essentially already known. And this is great for training you and getting you to experience what science is. But it's a little bit, most of what you've done in your A-levels, other people have found out already. And the thing about being a scientist in a research environment or a university environment is that we want to find out things that nobody knows already. And that's what makes it exciting. So I think people use this diagram quite a lot it's a little bit hard to go through, so I'll go bit by bit. So the first thing says, imagine a circle that contains all of human knowledge. And the dots inside the main circle represent how much people know. So by the time you finish primary school, you might know a little bit in blue. When you finish high school, your amount of knowledge expands a bit. You get the green knowledge. You go to university maybe, and you get a bachelor's degree, and the amount of knowledge you know about everything increases, but probably increases in a specific area. Maybe you do a chemistry degree and you find out a little bit more about chemistry than everyone else in the world. So you're developing a speciality. Now your master's degree or your postgraduate degree will develop that speciality further. And at some point, you begin to know all there is to know about a certain subject. And that puts you in a really exciting position, because that's not all there is to know about the subject. It's just that nobody has found out about the unknown yet. So when you're doing scientific research, you're pushing the boundary of knowledge. So you're trying to find out something that no one else has found out before. And that's really exciting. And it's written down here that the little dent that you've created in the boundary of human knowledge is a PhD. That's what you get your degree for. And the world to you looks super different, because you know this and nobody else in the world knows this. And that's one of the really exciting things about being a scientist. But actually, the bit of knowledge that you've generated and contributed is really small. So there's people all over the world building our knowledge in different fields and in different times. So it's quite humbling to be part of that knowledge creation mechanism. So what do we do as scientists? I've just said that we create knowledge, and that's what we do in the lab every day. We try and find out what is happening and how things happen. We write up our experiments, much like you write up school reports, really, in the format of academic research papers that we publish or try to publish in these journals that I've drawn on the left. Things like Nature, Science. And this lets other people in the world read our discoveries and find out what we've contributed to the knowledge sphere. And they can then build on our knowledge, on our discoveries, to generate new knowledge themselves. So we also teach and train students. So many of the people that run research groups are also required to lecture to undergraduates in universities. So we will pass on our knowledge to students, and depending on which level of undergraduate they are at, this can be relatively simplistic first year undergraduate stuff to teaching the undergraduate students, practically what we're doing in the lab every day. So stuff that's really not known to very many people at all. And we also try and solve problems as well. So because we are good at understanding and creating knowledge, we are often called in the medical field to try and find out solutions to make healthcare better, to make disease diagnosis better, to make therapies better. The COVID pandemic hit last year, and many of us turned our laboratories to trying to understand the coronavirus and try and understand how and why people got sick from it. So we try and solve problems. Oh dear, all over the shop here. Okay, one thing I really love about being a scientist is it teaches you about, you have to be creative, but it teaches you about failure. If you're working in a field where you're trying to create new knowledge and nobody else knows these things before, most of what you will do won't work. And you have to be, you get comfortable performing experiments that don't work. And it's really important that you do that, because you have to push so hard at the boundaries of knowledge to find out something new. And if every experiment that you did worked, you probably weren't trying hard enough to think of something new. So you get a really good perspective on failure being a scientist, and that it's okay to do lots of experiments and they haven't worked. And you now know that that's not a hypothesis that's worth chasing. I've included a picture from a friend of mine who's written a book called How to Fail. And it's actually a really good book about being comfortable with failure and realizing that not everything you do needs to be successful. So I became a scientist. This is a little bit of text here. So because I had a relatively poorly defined career ambition when I was younger, I loved my science lessons though. And I became super interested in science when I got to university, and super disillusioned by office jobs and banking and consultancy and those sorts of jobs. For me, they tick boxes for some people, but they didn't tick boxes for me. And the university environment I enjoyed because it was full of people that were inquisitive and questioning and really wanted to find things out. And actually doing a postgraduate degree essentially deferred my decision of when and how to enter the real world of work. But I could keep being a scientist, and I could keep doing things that I enjoyed. And it was during my PhD that I realized I was doing okay, and I could probably make a career out of it if I wanted to. And then it became, it wasn't something I'd really considered until I got to that stage was that, yes, I could actually be a scientist and this could be a career for me. It took me a long time to get to that stage. So having gone through university and through postgraduate university before I realized that. And at every stage, I've had great support from mentors and advisors, which have been really, really helpful. So these are just some of the institutions that I've worked at. As a scientist, you get to work in many different places. So I was lucky enough to do an undergraduate degree at Cambridge. I did a postgraduate degree, a PhD in Bristol, which is a wonderful experience. I absolutely love Bristol. Then I moved to London to do a PhD in infectious diseases in Guy's Hospital. And then I stayed working in King's College London to set up my own group. And now I work at the Francis Crick Institute. A couple more slides before we hand over to you. So I've tried to tell you all about how we perform discovery research to find out new things. I manage the students and postdocs that work underneath me. I spend a lot of time writing grants to secure money from funding bodies so that we can do the experiments. And I present data at conferences and I write and publish papers. In fact, I'm meant to be at a conference now at the moment, so I've just ducked out of it to come and talk to you lot. We teach students, we write lectures, we mark exams, we get students in the lab over the summer. And then we do a lot of citizenship as well. So I organize a lot of conferences. I serve on learned society boards. So these are public societies that represent the interests of scientists in the UK, such as the Biochemical Society, or in my case, the British Society of Cell Biology. There's a lot of reviewing of other people's work to check it's passed muster and is good and proper. And we oversee a lot of training, PhD students, postdocs, and other students. So we make sure other people get trained well in science. In my lab, I have, these are the people that work for me. I have 2 postdocs and 3 PhD students in the lab. They're all doing different scientific projects. You can see our website down in the bottom if you want to check us out. And this is what the working environment looks like. So we have a desk space on the left-hand side for people to sit and analyze results at. And then further back behind the glass wall, there is a laboratory bay full of equipment, reagents, fun stuff, bench space for us to perform the experiments. And on the right is a picture of what the institute looks like from the inside. Super lucky to work in this brand new purpose-built environment. This is about the only slide I'm going to show you of what we actually do. And my lab uses a lot of microscopy techniques to analyze the process of cell division. So this is a human cell in which we have introduced a fluorescent protein called CHIMP7, which has a fluorescent protein tag on it. And the fluorescent protein lets us use light microscopes to look at the protein inside the cell. And we can use light microscopes that keep the cells alive, so we can watch living cells expressing fluorescent proteins and try and work out how the cell divides and what processes go on inside dividing cells that make sure division happens properly. And what I'm showing you here is a picture of a protein that localizes specifically to the nuclear envelope, which is a membrane that surrounds and compartmentalizes the nucleus. So the aim of my lab is to work out how the cell rebuilds the nuclear envelope at the end of cell division. And we use these genetic and biochemical techniques to try and unpick and understand this process. Okay, what are we doing next? And last couple of slides are to tell you what actually my day involves. So this is a mocked up calendar of mine from a few years ago when I was a postdoc. You can see there wasn't much in my calendar at this time. So I had a few meetings. We'd have a meeting with my boss every week. I would have to do a presentation in a lab meeting with my colleagues, telling them what I've done in the week, and maybe attend a departmental seminar. And you can see the rest of my calendar is almost entirely free. And that was great because I can fill all that free time with doing experiments at the bench, generating data, analyzing data, and really doing hands-on practical work. As you get more senior and asked to do more things, you see your diary fills up mainly with meetings, so meetings to supervise other people, meetings to arrange collaborative research, meetings to teach people, meetings to keep the institute you're working in running, but lots of conversations. But we still try and keep as much time free as possible so that I can still do some lab work at the bench, can still mark student essays, still do some student teaching. So it's a real mix of stuff that I do every day. Okay, the good things I love, I think I've talked about here. Complete freedom to pursue your research questions. You're paid to do something that you love. You get generous funding from research agencies, and you get to work in amazing places with amazing people. It doesn't have to be the UK. There's a lot of travel in science. You can work all over the world. And the culture in science is based largely upon respect, which is really nice. So we respect each other's discoveries. We respect each other's contributions. There are bad things about being a scientist. Universities are not the greatest employers, and the job security is pretty limited. The workload actually turns out to be quite high. It's much like running your own business, almost running your own lab. You need to find staff, you need to find money to pay for things, you need to produce outputs and convince other people that what you're doing is worthwhile. You learn to deal with failure. There's quite a lot of pressure, but pressure can be a good thing. Pressure can really motivate you. And there are a lot of expectations that you place upon yourself. So, I want to discover really exciting things, and you can't guarantee discovery. So it can create an interesting environment where you're desperate for new discoveries, but you're never really sure if you're going to make one. Anyway, I think I've waffled on for quite long enough now, so I will close the share and hand over to anybody that wants to ask me any questions.